So, welcome to the Poolside Pass podcast, episode 2. Today I'm with Kevin Brooks, head coach at Wycombe District Swimming Club. He's been here since 2012, I think. So, Kevin, thanks for coming on the podcast. Welcome.
That's all right.
Just to start with, I want to ask you a little bit about your background in the sport, how it all began for you, really.
Right. I started swimming as a competitive swimmer at the age of roughly 11 in 1992 at Maxwell Swimming Club, and I swam there as a age group and youth swimmer until I want to say 97-ish. I only got to, I say only, but just up to, it was called district level then, so basically regional level now in today's money. But I wasn't that good, and I loved swimming, and I was attending loads. I was one of those classic swimmers which did everything that was asked of them, but never actually did that well. So it's a bit of a workhorse, you could say. But basically, I started doing my lifeguarding course at the age of 16, which would have been in 1997, and then I quickly did my assistant swimming teacher's course, which is now the level 1, and I started teaching kids to swim. And I quickly realised how much I enjoyed it. At the time, Maxwell Swimming Club had some local performance skills lessons, and I asked the then head coach, which was Janko, who's now head coach at Hatfield, if I could start helping out. And he went, yeah, of course. So I started doing that. And then very quickly, I started helping with the age group squad, which was led by a coach called Ian Blythe. And then he decided to stop, and I quickly got offered the chance to lead this county age group squad at the age of 17, 18, which would have been 1999, 98, somewhere around then. And I said, yeah, all right, so I got straight in with that. And I started that with the aim of being I remember walking on poolside because I wanted to go and see one of my old coaches, and I was 17, 18, around that age. And he said, so why do you want to start coaching, Kevin? And the first thing that came into my head was, well, his name was Vic. I said, Vic, well, I can't get to national level as a swimmer. I've tried and I can't. So I'm going to get there as a coach. And he was like, okay, great. And funnily enough, that year with my group of age group swimmers that I had 5 kids qualify for National Age Group Championships, which was 1999. And it all started from there. And at that point, I did my level 2. It was called the ASA Teacher Certificate, and I had just turned 18, and they managed to sneak me onto the course. So yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned when you first started, your aims were to kind of go to those nationals as a coach.
Yeah.
Having done that in your first year, did you have to reevaluate very quickly what you wanted out from there?
Yeah, I still remember the thrill of seeing the girls. The majority of them were girls qualify in certain events at counties, and I was just I thought it was the best thing ever. And I was 18, I was just wow, this is amazing. I've got kids to this level, and it just inspired me to be right, well, what can I do now? And I just kept trying to learn, and I was that classic young coach thinking I probably knew it all, and just kind of threw myself in. And but I was so passionate about the club because I've been a member of there for so long. They quickly made me into deputy head coach there, and I did my ASA club coaches, which is, I guess, the level 3 now. I did that when I was 19, so I was doing a lot of coaching, and then basically I continued to coach during my A-level period, and I had 2 years out of school just to coach at Maxwell Swimming Club. I was assisting Janko, learnt a lot of him at the time. And then I went to university, having just turned 21 in that September. So I went to uni in 2002. And I just wanted to keep coaching. In fact, I remember my first day going to university, being dropped off by my dad. He took me in my car, which I was using, and then he went and got the train home. But the first thing I did was I drove straight away to Ferndown Swimming Club, which was at the time the best swimming club in Dorset, a very small programme. But they had an Olympian in Karen Legg, a swimmer on the World Champs team, Alex Savage, and their head coach Tony Watson was a multiple Olympic coach, and he was on the Olympic team staff and stuff. And I went straight there to suss out this programme which I was going to be coaching at, because I'd already organised that in advance. I was then their junior coach, and I did that for 2 years whilst being at university, and that was my main commitment outside of going to uni, and it just kept building from there.
I know what it's like when you say it's your main commitment outside university. My mum always pestered me when I was doing my degree. Not pestered, reminded me that I was there to get my degree first and foremost, and the coaching came second. But to me, I was only going to that university to enable me to carry on coaching in the programme that I was coaching. So
I remember at uni, I did my placement year. We all needed to find a placement year in year 3. And Maxwell Swimming Club, Janko suddenly left, and they approached me saying, "Would you like to become the new head coach at Maxwell?" I was like, "Whoa, I'm still at uni, but I'll do it for my placement year." And then literally, I had some swimmers on the European short course team a few months later, like 4 or 5 months later, and I was like, "Crikey, I'm quite enjoying this." So I then said, "I do want to become your head coach," but they'd already gone out to recruitment, so I went for an interview, and they kindly gave me the job based on me still being at uni. So I was doing a lot of travelling over the next year and a half. But I remember going back to uni thinking to myself, right, I've got swimmers on GB teams at the moment. I've got a really successful club at that time, which was growing, and other people on my uni course were coaching. As a sports coaching degree, were coaching once a week, a bit of football here and there, and I was thinking, crikey, I was immersing myself in it.
They're on a coaching degree and not really coaching.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned there, how old were you when you got the head coach role at Maxwell?
I was 22, just turning 23.
Okay, so quite a young head coach in a programme like that. What were there any challenges that came with being such a young head coach in such a high profile programme?
Luckily for me, they all knew me, and they knew where I had been coaching, so I kind of had a good rapport and some respect, and I respected the swimmers, they respected me, and so that really helped at the time. But even though I was 23, I looked like I was 12. I had quite a baby face back then, and so it was that classic thing of like, you have older parents and they automatically think they can talk down to you. They automatically think that they know what's right. They automatically think you don't have enough experience or understanding in the sport, and it's just dealing with those little battles. And equally as well, it's actually understanding that being a head coach isn't just about you, it's about everything other than you. And so I quickly learnt that at the club, that if I wanted to do things, I had to do it with people and engage with people, and not just have all these amazing ideas and just be a loose cannon.
Okay. So when you took that head coach role at Maxwell, what were your kind of aims and ambitions for you in that role, and the vision for the programme going forward?
I think in my first year I felt absolutely out of depth, and I almost felt like, actually reflecting back now, I felt like almost the swimmers were kind of leading it a bit for me, and I was quickly trying to catch up in where am I meant to be, what am I meant to be doing, competitions here, cycles here, all that kind of stuff, and it was all a little bit like, this is maybe a bit too soon for me. But I quickly realised that what I needed to do, and I quickly got my head around things in a few months. It was only at the beginning, and just kept driving it forward. To me, it's always about positivity and the relentless pursuit of trying to be as good as you can be. And because swimming was a passion of mine, I just wanted to be better at it all the time. I just saw it as a way of, how can I not only be a better coach, but how can I get these swimmers to be better and better all the time, and not to keep reflecting back on thinking, oh well, that's bad and this is bad, or this is going to be bad. It's actually, no, how can we make it good?
Cool. So obviously since you were at Ferndown and then Maxwell, since then you've moved programmes a couple of times since then?
No, so almost. I was at Maxwell originally, as I said. I then went to Ferndown for 2 years. I was at Maxwell for 8 years as head coach, and now I've been at Wycombe for 7 years. Okay. So I've only really been at 3 swimming clubs. Yeah, so I've been coaching at national level 20 years.
So when you left Maxwell the first time, was the move to Ferndown something just because that club was local to where you were doing your degree, or did you pick your degree course based on a club you wanted to coach in?
A bit of both. I originally applied to go to university to do some like civil engineering degree, product design, something around that, because I was really interested in that. My A levels were design technology, physics, and PE. And I originally started maths, and I decided to drop that pretty quick. And the course which was at Bournemouth University was a new course, and I realised very quickly that the course I applied for at uni I didn't want to do, even though I had an unconditional offer to go and do it. When my results came through, I declined that unconditional offer and immediately looked at the course they're doing at Bournemouth, which is a sports coaching and development course, which just ticked all my boxes because I love the sport in itself and the development of sport, as well as the coaching and performance side of things, so it really hit me. And also the area of Bournemouth was always quite close to my heart because we used to go there as family a little bit when I was younger, and it just always felt like one big holiday down there. So I went there for an open day and I was just like, oh my god, I love this place. It just happened to be a beautiful day and the beach was there, and it was just, yeah,
They always recruit students when the sun's out.
yeah, absolutely. So I just fell for it, and to be honest, when I was looking at coaching, I thought where are the best clubs in Bournemouth area, and obviously I looked at what was then called Bournemouth Dolphins, but Ferndown was a better club with a coach on an Olympic team at that time. So I was like, right, I'm prepared to drive. It's almost half an hour every day to go to that programme to do it. So that's what I did.
Okay. So then you returned to Maxwell for the second time, and you coached up there until 2012.
That's right, yeah, summer 2012.
So then post summer 2012, how did you decide that was the time to move, and how did you decide that you wanted to move here to Wycombe and coach
Right.
here?
So when I was at Maxwell, the club wasn't the top club in the county, although it had some significantly good swimmers. In that first year I was at Maxwell, I had 3 swimmers on the European short course team and 1 swimmer at European juniors. I then, in 2006, the club then became top club in the county for the first time in a long time. And then following on from that, I had some swimmers at European juniors and then European senior championships, and the club was continually being a more dominating club in that area. Particularly against like the local rivals, you could say, of CMK and Oxford, but Maxwell was significantly higher at that time. And not only that, the club was growing in size, so we started with 100 swimmers, and gradually over those 8 years I got the club to 350 swimmers in size. Craig Gibbons, I actually swam with him as a swimmer. He came back to the club after he swam at European Short Course in 2004. He went off to a sprint centre that British Swimming has sent up, and various other national centres, and he floated around a lot. He came back wanting to quit the sport in 2009, early 2009. I then facilitated his training to the Olympic Games in 2012, which was an aim for him, his lifelong aim to qualify, and we managed to do it, having learnt lots of lessons along the way, but he managed to do it when it mattered. And so realistically, just putting that all into context, when it got to the end of those 8 years, I looked at it and I saw the job at Wycombe had come up, and Wycombe wasn't performing that well as a club at that point, far from it.
Different facilities.
Yeah, different facility.
Right?
There's a great old 6-lane 50-metre pool, great training pool, you could say. Horrific racing pool. I mean, you feel like you're going backwards. But for me, it was a case of, right, I've been at Maxwell for 8 years. I've kind of built a club up. I've introduced an academy. I've had various international swimmers. The club is a dominated club in the local area. I've just created an Olympian in that pool and environment, which is a 25-metre pool. What more can I do here? Yes, we could merge with other local teams. Will I ever realistically have international swimmers again here? Well, yeah, I could quite easily have junior internationals again. Could I have more than that? Unlikely, unless someone comes in after university and stuff. So I kind of looked and thought, I think I need another challenge. And so I saw Wycombe and I applied for it, and I got the job, which was great. But I saw Wycombe as sort of like a starting point of being like, right, everything I've learned in the last 8 years as a head coach, and crikey, the previous however many years before that, how can I build a club up which is great for a local community? How can I build it up which is great for performance, coach development, all these different things? How can I start again and almost create something from afresh, from a club which was at rock bottom?
Yeah.
And the new pool, and the target of having a new pool 3 years down the line was a good sort of like thing to aim for.
So when you went in 2012, you wanted to have things set up and in place and moving in the right direction in time for delivery of the new pool?
Correct, yeah. So I was having meetings with the council just before I even started to try and understand what their strategy was. Then I helped them to realign their strategy. Then I understood where they were in terms of what they're doing with the pool, and then I had some major impact with the team here in terms of how we can make the pool into something a bit better than what they thought. And it all just kept building and building, but it was a continuous, relentless pursuit of trying to get things the way you wanted things to be.
Sounds like you had a plan from the outset and you just kept evolving that and evolving.
We had this plan called Swim Wycombe, and everything was centred around that plan of how we can move aquatics forward in the local district.
So since then, obviously Wycombe has become quite a successful programme. You seem to have success year on year. What do you think is the driver behind what's causing that continued success year on year?
I put it down to success breeding success. So when I first started, and everything that comes around it, so when I first started I had a group of 6 to 8 regional level swimmers, and a club was 150 swimmers in size. The first thing when I spoke to those swimmers, the top squad I inherited, I said, what are your aspirations? Hands up if you want to do this. I asked, put your hands up. What are your aims in swimming? And this lad put his hand up, went, I want to get to regionals. Another lad said, I want to get on a regional podium. And after about the fourth person, I'm talking about regionals, I go, right guys, stop right there. Do any of you ever want to represent your country? And their faces were like, huh? What are you talking about? We're Wycombe Swimming Club, we don't do that. And you kind of got that look. And I was just like, right, this is the day that you stop being like down here in your beliefs, and this is the day you start dreaming big. And that was my strap line I said to all of them at the time. I said, you've got to dream bigger than what you're dreaming at the moment. What could you achieve? I know what you could achieve. If you commit to what I asked you to do, you could get to a high level. And in that year we had 6 qualifiers for nationals. Craig, who was our assistant coach at the time, had a girl get a bronze medal, and we also had a relay team. Considering the club didn't have anyone at nationals for the previous 6 years, that was an epic achievement. Then the following year it built up to have 10 swimmers and a silver medal and another bronze medal and 2 relay teams, and it just kept building and building and building.
It was almost like changing the mindset in the programme from like a small club mentality
Absolutely.
into one where they believe that if they're in the programme, they've got the opportunity to achieve anything they want.
Very much so. And I'm a big believer in, I'm not one of these coaches which just wants to have a small group of swimmers and a small programme of elite swimmers, because actually one day those swimmers will move on and you could potentially be left with nothing. And so I believe that swimmers, as an actual person, teenagers, want to be around like-minded people. The last thing you want is to have a performance athlete that wants to do 20 hours a week training next to an athlete that wants to do 10 hours a week or 14 hours a week, and maybe is quite happy to just get to English level or just get to regional level. Those two mindsets don't really work. So what we tried to do from the outset here is develop a program where the right-minded athletes train together. So that's why our program now has 3 key sections to it. We have a performance section, which is roughly 8% of the club. We have a competitive pathway, and then we have a development pathway. And so as that whole structure gradually started to be implemented through the club, and it's obviously evolved over that time, we now have the performance program, which are all on the same wavelength. They all want to do the same thing. The people in the competitive squads are fantastic kids. They all want the same for themselves, but maybe not what performance want. And those that are turning up to the development section, well, they're not performance athletes, they're not competitive athletes, but they all have the common goal of having fun and keeping fit, and maybe the occasional competition. So there's 3 completely different types of mindsets for training, all which are really important for our club, but they're all separated out. And there is integration, because sometimes they swim side by side, but not that often. And so that way, performance drives participation. So the higher level the performance side gets, it gradually brings up the rest of the program.
Yeah.
So now we're getting swimmers in senior competitive getting to English nationals, when before the first thing was just getting to get to counties. Yeah. So it's having a knockdown effect.
So the top end of the the performance strand
Yeah.
brings up the
Absolutely.
quality
Yeah, yeah.
in the other strands.
And then because the club's doing so well, people want to be part of that, so they come and inquire about the club because it's like, oh, we hear you're a successful club. Regardless of if their kid isn't that good, they want to be part of a successful club.
So obviously, when you first arrived at Wycombe, there was on the coaching team yourself and your assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any other
So
head
there's
coaches at the time?
There's 2 full-time coaches. Back when I first started coaching, you'd be lucky if there was 3 full-time coaching jobs in the entire Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire area. Now there's multiple. I mean, like as a club now. So when we started, we had 2 full-time coaches, myself and a guy called Craig Oliver. That was one of my ex-swimmers in the past, anyway. He was fantastic. He understood me, I understood him, and we worked really well as a team. And we couldn't have done what we did without each other, if you know what I mean. It worked really well for the time we were in. We had other volunteer coaches. We had an amazing group of volunteer coaches in our club. And then gradually, as the club started to evolve, going from 150 swimmers to 250 swimmers to 300 plus, we're like, we need to recruit an additional coach. So we looked into having a full-time development coach. Then as the years went on, we're like, well, we need a full-time junior coach, but we haven't got as many hours for junior coaching. So actually this guy we know is also an ex-swimmer, is a really interesting in S&C. So let's create a full-time junior coach position with an S&C role as well. And then, because I was thinking ahead, clubs are going to need to have that provision anyway. So that started back in like 2014 or 2015, I'd say, which was a real good thing that we did. And then it just has evolved. So now we have basically 6 full-time swimming coaches and 1 full-time S&C coach, and various part-time coaches, and still have various amazing volunteer coaches. So it's just kept evolving.
So as the membership's grown, as the demand has grown, the coaching team's grown with that. And were there any obstacles in the way of being able to recruit more and more coaches into your programme?
I wouldn't say obstacles, other than I'm quite picky on the coaches I want in the club. When you've built up a big structure and what's become a successful programme, and you every head coach has a certain philosophy and way of doing things, certain standards they want meeting. I mean, I give the coaches here a lot of free rein, but they know the boundaries of what I expect. You know, the type of coaching I want to see, the type of program I want to see in terms of the younger swimmers and the older swimmers and etc. So there are some clear philosophies in the program, but then they're allowed to bring themselves into it and coach and plan their own stuff. And then I sit down with each of them, and we sit down as a team to go over things. In terms of did you say challenges? The biggest challenge we always felt with recruitment was actually finding good enough coaches.
Okay.
Sounds silly, but actually you'd be surprised how that actually not many coaches apply for roles. We're talking of between 10 to 20 some jobs. When we had our S&C coach role, we had over 50 people apply, but for a swimming coach role we had only 10 to 20. And so it's like the numbers are significantly less for some reason, but also the experience and quality of coaches, I've always quite surprised at that. And
surprised in a good way or a bad way?
In a bad way, but maybe because my standards are so high. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the coaches we picked were standout people within each of those applications, and I saw them being exceptional coaches before, and they lived up to that. So that's a good thing.
Cool. So, moving on from that, do you think that in England and Britain as a whole, we're struggling to recruit younger people into the coaching profession?
I think a lot of people like the thought of being a swimming coach or a coach generally, but when they realise how much dedication is required and how much time commitment is required and how much it can knock your social life, particularly if you're a young coach, more and more people back away from it, and they want to be associated with success, but maybe aren't prepared to give the hours required to have the success. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that.
And I think a lot of the changes in terms of the coach development in this country, particularly with the Swim England work that's going on, I think that's a real positive, and I'm seeing standards improve all the time. I'm seeing the key messages coming across all the time, and that's far better than what it was 20 years ago for me.
Yeah. So you talk about, they're doing a good job of bringing the standard up of young coaches or coaching in general. When you was a young coach and you was kind of first getting on the ladder, what was kind of the biggest challenge you faced in any role you've been in, and how did you kind of get around that and continue progression from there?
The biggest challenge, I think, as a swimming coach, I think the biggest challenge you all face, and I saw it at like British Summer Champs, for example, the moment you go to the highest level competition of your career as a coach, you suddenly have this a little bit of like fear come in, or a little bit of anxiety, a bit of like nervousness as a coach. So I noticed very quickly at nationals, the coaches which maybe were there for the first time with the first crop of swimmers that they're head coach of, and their anxiety and nerves were through the roof. And I reflected and thought, actually, I can relate to that, because 20 years ago, even at like if you go back to that highest level thing, so for me the highest level thing I had back when I was 17 was having those 5 girls get to nationals. I remember going to nationals then and thinking, crikey, I'm at the Olympic Games here, this is amazing. It wasn't, but to me at the time it was like, this is the big deal. So every time you have a new experience which is higher than the one you've had before, it's always going to bring some anxiety as a coach. So the first time one of your swimmers has the potential to get on a national podium at, well, then it was age or youth championships, now it's British championships, there's an immediate bit of, God, there's a bit of anxiety here. I've not had a swimmer do this before. And that is that kind of like challenge which every coach will have. I'm now at the point now where I rarely get nervous at all, because you've had those experiences before, and you know that the most important thing you need to do as a coach is stay calm. In terms of challenges,
be the constant.
Absolutely,
when there's highs and there's lows.
Absolutely, constant. Yeah. I think for me, a crucial thing was when I was at Ferndown, and Bill Sweetman was only recently in post, and I hadn't met him before, and I was covering a set. Well, I started off a coaching session. I was turning up. Tony was a full-time PE teacher anyway. And I rocked up on poolside. I was waiting for Tony to come with a session that he'd planned. I knew the type of work we were doing, so I knew the theme of the session, but I was assisting him, so I didn't have it with me. And sitting on poolside was Bill Sweetman, John Atkinson, the entire sports science team of British Swimming, and I was just like, oh crap. And then I introduced myself, and I was like, yeah, Tony's coming. Tony didn't turn up, so I quickly made something up on the spot in front of the National Performance Director without him really realising, put it on the board, got the swimmers to train. Tony then turned up an hour later because he was held up at school. The session was going great, the kids were doing well. I had blagged my way through things with Bill and John and stuff, and the session was great. But my anxiety and nerves while trying to do that was through the roof. For the first time I've ever met somebody that at the time was a huge person that had just come onto the scene in terms of British swimming. And so that sort of thing there for me very quickly just went, nah, this is fine. Pressure's fine. And that's one thing I've tried to deal with all the time, is dealing with pressure. Because that's a pressurised environment if you've not had that before.
So, in terms of my own experiences, just trying to relate to that level of anxiety you speak about when you get to that first big meet of yours. 2 seasons ago, I had a group, and they weren't expected to qualify for regionals because they were doing 4 sessions a week, 2 with me, 2 with the home programme, and I had one girl qualify on a 50, and I thought, great, she's qualified. I turn up, because in West Midlands we have a day where it's just 50, so I turned up for the day, and there was 2 other coaches from my programme on poolside, and I was like, wow, I'm at regionals or whatever for the first time. I've actually got to coach someone to do a performance here. And then when the penny drops, you've actually got to actually get a result out of it. And in the next season, for one reason or another, I was the only coach in the programme that was going for the whole championships. The other groups were dropping in and out. And all of a sudden, I'd moved up in a role, and I had 20 swimmers. It was me and 20 swimmers on deck at regional championships. I've only ever been once before as a coach, and I've got to manage these 20 swimmers and get performances out of each and every one of them, and it was quite nerve-wracking, but I managed to get through it in the end.
Yeah. I mean, like you said the word already, which is constant, like being just a constant, narrow out the peaks and the troughs of the wave. It's just trying to be that just constant calm person, and I certainly think I've become a lot more like that in the last 8 years than maybe what I was in the previous 12 years. Yeah, and that's really important, because nothing changes. It's just another swimming pool. You're just there to get your business done, and get in and get out, and do it properly. It's just another competition. It's just another pool. As I say to my swimmers, it's just another gala.
Yeah.
Olympic trials coming up. It's just another gala, and you're going to smash it. Why worry about it?
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier on when we've been speaking, you've been coaching now over 20 years. Has your philosophy as a coach changed through the over 20 years or so, and how has it kind of evolved into what it is now?
I've always been a very technically minded coach. I've always loved, I remember when I was doing swimming, and this is why I'm really pleased I did swimming teaching, and I think a lot of coaches should do that, because it really makes you understand the basics of technique and where it comes from, and how hard it is for kids to understand it, and how they always revert back to what they know best. And it's just getting across some simple things and understanding that technique. There's different ways of putting it across for different age groups, and so like a young 5 to 8-year-old, they need things really simple and really effective, like just keeping it short, sharp, simple, different type of communication to what you'd have with a 17, 18-year-old in terms of how you deliver a stroke. The amount of teachers I got really annoyed about talking to 5-year-olds about high elbows. I'm like, why are you talking to them about that? They don't understand where their elbow is, let alone if it's high or low, So just keep it simple. And that's been a philosophy I've always had, keeping it simple, but having age-appropriate technique sessions. Yeah, I still do, and my swimmers like it, coach-led technique sessions occasionally each week, where it's just me talking through technique and making it progressive. So, and they love it, but it just flows, because it's just, I think you might have seen something I've done with a younger group before. We just go through some drills, but the whole session is progressive, moving it on at the right pitch for them. And when you think they've mastered that, then you can move on to the next bit, etc. And so what I've always been a big believer in like coach-led technique and really getting skills across in the right way. When I was doing those lessons back then, when I was like 17, I didn't care too much about the tick box culture of, oh, have they done this, and then I just always knew that if I do this stuff properly and I've planned to do this, then they'll master those things anyway. And they did. They always did really well, and their strokes were always the best out of all the lesson classes at the time, I thought, because they had some really good skills. And so skills, technique, and that aerobic foundation has always been something that I've followed. I mean, I often see it now. A lot of coaches try and I don't want to say want immediate success, but they get wrapped up in the latest fad. So I'm sounding like an old coach here, but it's true. I remember when Swiss balls first came out. It sounds silly, but those Swiss balls, you see them in the gym all the time. At one point, back in the early 2000s, every swimmer was trying to use a Swiss ball in everything they did, because it was like, wow, this thing's going to be amazing. But now they're just a normal, regular fixture in the gym, and people use them. Maybe most people don't use them. A thing you can probably think about more recently is rollers. Everyone's using rollers. There'll soon be another alternative to a roller, whatever it is. Whilst they do have obviously their uses, swimmers can become reliant on them. So my point is, there's always been lots of little fads that you have, and it's you as a coach to recognise what value can you take from it, and should you incorporate it or not. But I've had this conversation with coaches before where, swimming is a well-established sport where swimmers have reached a significantly high level, where world records are significantly quick, and there's been significant work that's been done to achieve those records. There are generally no shortcuts. Yeah. And the latest fad. So, for example, I call it a fad, but it's a training technique which I respect and I've done occasionally.
USRPT.
USRPT. Yeah, absolutely. for that as a concept, great concept. As a training program, I don't believe in it. But as a session,
Dropping
or
bits
as
in
part
and
of
out
this
your
and part of that, I can see the value in it. But I see coaches, and I think back to myself before it was even called USRPT. I remember doing a season of very high intensity work back in, 2006 maybe? And it's probably the worst year I ever had. And I was thinking, and their skills are poor, their stroke mechanics are poor. They could sprint, they could sprint, but they couldn't back end, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. They looked fit, they were a little bit overweight in my opinion. And so realistically, I've really kind of honed down on knowing what works through trial and error. And so I believe now that the program I run now is the best program I've ever run, because it's a formation of 20 years of continued experience of what works and what doesn't work. But I hope that continues, and it should continue over the next 20 years.
So that drive to keep building, the process of developing, how do you keep that rolling every single day?
I learned
in every element of the club.
I learned a real valuable lesson from a well-established American coach called Nort Thornton. He coached Matt Bondi and stuff. So he retired a year after Nathan Adrian had been at Cal Berkeley, and that was the program I was really fortunate to go and see as part of a British Swimming Select program in 2005 or 6 now. Anyway, I asked him, some key take-homes, and one of the things he said that always stuck with me was, the day you know it all, retire. And I love that. So never think you know it all, because you should always realise that you can learn things off anyone, and I mean anyone. I learn off my swimmers all the time. I learn off other coaches all the time. I did a coaching clinic over the summer, and this level 1 coach put something across in a different way, and I just went, I love what you just did there. I love how you've just done that. That's brilliant. I'm taking that away. And he's like, really? I go, absolutely. That was fantastic. Because it was. Say it for what it is. It was fantastic what he showed me. But for me, it's always a case of continually evolving yourself. So I asked him, I said, you do so many different things here. I mean, and you've been coaching for 39 years at this level. What's different? How do you move it on? He goes, I change one major thing a year. I said, what, anything else? He goes, yeah, a couple of minor things maybe, but there's one major thing I change every year, because then I know the impact it's had or not. If you try and have too many big ideas, or you've gone to a conference and you've picked up all these things, if you try and change 4 things in that year and it goes wrong, well, you don't know why it's gone wrong. Equally, if it went right, you don't know why it went right.
Yeah.
And so that's why swimming is such a long-term sport, because every year I'll add something extra in, or take something out, or do something a bit different, and you can straight away see the benefits of it or the negatives of it. Change too much, well, you don't know why.
Yeah.
So have all your good ideas.
It's like an ongoing experiment.
Absolutely.
You never change too much in an experiment.
Yeah.
You only have one variable.
Yeah.
So what's your dream now? Your dream when you first started was to have swimmers at national championships.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 20 or so years on, what's your dream? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
So I've coached swimmers to national level for just over 20 years. I've had international swimmers since 2004 as a head coach, and I was assisting with international swimmers for a period before that. Coached on to Olympic Games and stuff, which is all great. For me, moving forward, it's just got to be more of that and better. The program I'm in right now, I have everything that I need to coach multiple Olympians if I had the swimmers to do it. And when I say if I have the swimmers to do it, I have the swimmers to do it right now. I have some incredible kids, but they're junior level. And the area we're in is such a well-educated area that they will all want to go off to high-flying universities, some with swimming institutions next door, some potentially without, which often saddens me. But their later days in swimming, majority of swimmers will go off to bigger university programs because they offer degrees in mechanical engineering, mathematics, that they want a seriously good education at the highest level. And so for me to retain those swimmers here, even though we have a university offering, it's not the offering that they want. And so they will go. The only way in which I'll retain seniors is if they are interested in the courses that we do at Buxton University, and actually there's some fantastic courses there, and I've got some senior athletes that stay on and do that now, and that's a real positive, and it's a fantastic relationship we have with the programme there now, and potentially if any athletes then come back after university. So I can foresee us having high level international success at a senior level, but the biggest issue I have is the fact that swimmers will leave, not because of the swimming, because of the degree that they want to go and do, which is just not offered here. So that limits things.
Yeah.
But for me, having regular success at junior international level is a really good aim to have in this programme. We've had good success of that already, and potentially in the future we've got some great kids coming through that are already ranking very highly and are British medalists from last summer. So for me, my aims over the next however long is to just keep building Wycombe into something better than what it's been before. But with any programme, and any performance coach will recognise this, there's always going to be highs, there's always going to be lows. One year you'll have a really exceptional swimmer that wins multiple gold medals at nationals, suddenly makes your programme look really good. In fact, our best ever year in terms of gold medals was probably 2015. But our best ever year in terms of national finals and number of national medals was actually this year just gone. We had significantly more kids getting medals than what we did before.
Yeah.
And to me, that's better success, better depth at a higher level.
So how do you sustain yourself every day, every week, every season with that drive to keep building? It must be quite taxing on you mentally in terms of bringing that same energy every day.
For me, one of the things I always think about as a coach, and I think one of the ways in which I coach is I'm very engaged with my swimmers, or I try to be as much as possible, and so I listen to their problems, I talk to them all the time, and I'm actually a bit of a sponge in that sense, so I'm always dealing with other people's issues, other people's problems, absorbing it all, trying to help them, and so it's very easy to just take all of that stuff home with you and worry about it. I mean, I've had every scenario you could possibly imagine. Swimmers doing self-harm, swimmers wanting to commit suicide, swimmers that overeat or undereat, swimmers which are having issues with their girlfriends or boyfriends, swimmers which are having issues with their parents, issues at school. I mean, I could just keep going on, and I think swimming coaching is becoming a bit like, I often think if I want to do further education in like a college or something, I often think about doing like counsellor training or something like that, just because I think that could add some real depth to my coaching and understanding a person and how I can help them on a difficult path, because I fundamentally care for my athletes and they know that, and that's a major thing within our programme. But for me personally, bearing in mind with all of that stuff coming at me, and then if you think about the involvement I'll have with national governing bodies, with the Swimming and Performance Centre, being head coach of a 650 swimming club, with various full-time staff, various part-time staff, engaging with the council, engaging with the pool provider, I'm literally being pulled in every possible direction. And my days look incredibly long. So what I try and do to try and just keep myself on the right track, and I've got into this a lot more recently, is my squad have 10 coaching sessions a week. I only coach 9 of those. So the 10th one, Josh actually takes, who's our lead performance coach. Fantastic coach, but it's good for him to take my swimmers which are training on that evening. That allows me to have a Friday night at home with family or seeing friends. A Saturday is my day off, depending on competitions obviously, and then I coach again on Sunday morning. That allows me to have more headspace. One rule I try and set myself wherever possible is when I get home at 7:15 at night, 7:30 at night, I don't look at emails, I don't look at stuff like that, I won't respond to many messages, I try and avoid that wherever possible. But the biggest thing for me, trying to stay focused on coaching, is I've been going back into the gym and going swimming myself. So before this interview today, I'll have coached from being here at 5:15, coached pre-pool obviously, 2-hour swim session. My guys went into the gym with Gemma, I was in the gym, observing what they're doing around if needed, but I was doing my own gym work away from them, not near them, just in another area, doing my own workout. And that's why I'm dressed in shorts and t-shirt now, because I've just done that. But I've done my exercise for the day, and then I can crack on with paperwork and admin, knowing I've done something. And I may come in for a swim later before I carry on with admin and stuff. So staying on top of your exercise is so important for your own mental health and your own physical fitness, and it allows me now to have so much more energy and drive and passion for my coaching. In fact, at Summer Nationals, one of the reasons I think I was more calm and on it during Nationals and more focused was every day I did some sort of exercise, whether it was a run, gym or swim. For every day of Nationals, for the 2 weeks, British and English, I did something. And that helped me stay on top of things. And this is the major thing with our coaching team. We all try and make sure we all do the same. We all recognise that each of us have to go and do stuff. And that's why I think we're doing so well as a programme/team, is because we all understand each other's needs and that we all need a bit of time out, and it helps us all coach better.
Yeah.
So that is a most important thing I can recommend to any coach, is if you are not exercising in the week and if you are sleeping in the day, which I don't do, then you're going to get physically and mentally drained and unhealthy, and that will not help your coaching.
So just to round off, if you were in a room with lots and lots of young coaches today, and you were given a talk, what would be the three things that you'd tell them to think about going forward in their career to develop it to its max?
As I tell my swimmers, the first thing, dream big in your coaching, and with that, be prepared to go and visit and travel and get to know other coaches to learn. Whilst they've redone the level 3 course, which I know you're on, or the senior coach, whatever it's called now. Now I'm feeling old. You'll learn certain amounts of that. You'll learn knowledge. You'll learn the most about coaching through talking to other coaches, through going to opportunities like going to your first regionals. You'd have learned a lot, not just about your swimmers, but about yourself as a coach. Exploring every opportunity there is to learn and gain knowledge is the number one thing you've got to keep doing, and you've got to always keep doing it. You know, it always surprises me when opportunities come up and coaches don't engage with them. That's the biggest way I learn, and so always keep putting yourself forward. And if national programme opportunities come up, or regional programme opportunities come up, and if you're a young coach, just put your name out there. One day you'll be accepted onto doing it, and in the worst case, you'll start getting a name for putting yourself forward, and they'll be like, well, why not? You know, if there's camps running or British swimming camps running, ask, well, can I come and shadow? I know you don't want me doing anything, but can I just watch? There's National Centre in Loughborough. Can I go and watch? Can I just watch what you do, please? I won't interfere with anything. Can I just sit on poolside and watch? It's putting yourself out there and realising you can do that. You know, I often have coaches come here almost on a weekly basis, and I'm like, absolutely, you can come down here, and I'm always prepared to give you my time, because you're putting yourself out there to learn. So the second thing I would say would be coaching in a team and respecting your team of coaches, whether you're a head coach or an assistant coach, is so important as a young coach coming through. It's recognising that everyone's on their own coaching journey, and that if you want to progress, then the best way of progressing is, you know, working with people and understanding what their point of view is, and listening, and actually listening to parents and taking people with you in that sense.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really, really important, because it's so easy as a young coach to wind people up the wrong way. Fellow coaches, parents, swimmers, and equally, you know, that would not be a good start for coaching for you. So take people with you, be respectful, that kind of thing is the second biggest thing. And I think that finally, I think the third thing really is be true to yourself and fully develop your own coaching philosophy. Nobody needs like 20,000 coaches which coach like Kev Brooks, or 20,000 coaches which coach like you. You know, be true to yourself and believe in what you do, but more importantly than anything, know why you do it, Don't just do it because someone else does it.
Yeah.
You know, being true to yourself is, I do it like this because I believe in it because of these reasons, and I know these reasons because I've learned it over the years. And I'd have to put a fourth thing in there is always put your hand up and be like, you don't know everything. So if you've made mistakes, then admit to it and quickly change it. Don't just try and like blag it and hang on to a lie because you'll be found out. Just, you know, be honest. I think that's 3-4 things I've blabbled on about.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Kevin Brooks. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you coming on and helping me out with the podcast. So that's it. Episode 3 complete. Episode 2 complete. It was planned for episode 3, but it's episode 2. If you've not listened to episode 1 with Chris Littler, I suggest you go and do that now. Good reflection and conversation with Chris on his experiences out in Japan with British Swimming last December. And if you've got any ideas for future episodes, or perhaps yourself want to come on and talk to me on the podcast, please do get in touch.